Here's day one for our new 7-week training cycle for active recovery. What are we doing this cycle? We are going to be working on improving the single arm overhead squat. Why? Well, it's my biggest weakness. It's also a great full body mobility tool to work towards. So we'll do the same thing we did last cycle, which is test the single arm overhead squat, and then we are going to retest at the end of the 7 weeks. But each of these workouts is going to be geared to improving that position. So when we break this down, this is also going to fall in line with our programming that we're doing at Fuel for this training cycle. We've got to work on squats, we've got to work on overhead presses, we're even doing deadlifts. But by working on squat mobility, you actually help improve deadlift mobility and not necessarily the other way around. So we'll be working on getting into better squat positions, we'll be working on getting better overhead positions. But the combination of the two also includes a lot of thoracic mobility. And this is going to be something that just helps full body mobility. So it's not just improving a single movement, although this metric is a great proxy for the rest of your full body mobility. What you're going to need this month, we're going to get into using a couple different implements, kettlebells or a dumbbell. You can even use a shoe in a pinch, so something you can hold overhead, a dowel or a band or a strap, something that you can pull out straight overhead. So let's get going into day one of our 7-week training cycle to improve the single arm overhead squat. Okay, first part, get some ankle and knee circles. So bring the feet together. We're circling around. This is going to be how we start each one. Loosening up the ankles. So working on the single arm overhead squat, we're going to work from the bottom up. It's important we get those ankles ready for what we are going to work towards today. Switch directions. So while I'm doing this, seems like a pretty elementary one. I am thinking about straightening the knees at the top. I'm going to rotate, so I twist those ankles and get the knees as far forwards over the toes as I can with my heels planted firmly on the ground. And get any cracks out, begin to loosen them up, get the rotational force as necessary. Start warming up for the squat. 2, 1. Okay, and the next part on this one, standing rotations. I still want to keep those feet together, palms together. I want to rotate back, draw the elbow back, and rotate. Each one, get a little bit more rotated, drawing that elbow. So what the feet do together is allows a little bit more rotation, especially through the T-spine, so your thoracic spine, mid-spine, which is, for me, the biggest limiting factor in this overhead squat. Okay, loosen it right up. Another 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Grabbing that dowel, broomstick, band, whatever it is that you're using. The dislocates. So back and forth. What's important here is that whatever you're using, we want to find a straight elbow position. So you don't want to be bending the elbows as you lift overhead. I want to keep those elbows locked. Think about this movement through the shoulders. Wider is going to make this a little bit easier. Okay, narrower puts a little more emphasis on getting the shoulders, pecs stretched out. And as I'm doing these dislocates, I want to think about the rib cage. So as I pull the dowel down, you don't want to arch. I want to keep that rib cage down, maintain a brace, over and back. There's 6, 5, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, keeping this overhead. Hands a little bit closer together, feet together. I'm going to do a side bend. So as I side bend, I want to avoid the twist, and I'm actively pulling this dowel apart. I'm not straining to pull it apart, but I'm actively thinking about pulling those hands apart. Now, as I side bend, keep my knees straight. Take a breath on the way down. I also want to stay at least I don't want to twist. I want to keep this position all the way down. So I'm staying straight up and down. I'm maintaining this horizontal position. Notice how my hips shift away from the stretch. Hips shift away from the stretch. Working on loosening up the obliques. Okay, and this one we didn't do in the last cycle. I'm noticing the one side compared to the other. One side tighter than the other. And we get into this single arm overhead squat. I want to try and balance this out because we're going to need a little bit of this rotation through the trunk. 2, 1. I'm just going to hold this one down to the side now. Tough to breathe in this one, but push the hips away. Pull those arms apart, straighten the elbows. In through the nose, out through the nose. Back up, and other side. Inhale down, and breathe. Hips away. Feel that stretch. So right down the side of my left oblique. This is much tighter than the other side. Maybe you're paying attention to this as well. Keep those elbows straight. Another 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. The Jefferson curl. Basically working on our flexion extension of the spine. So hands shoulder width apart, feet together. I'm going to tuck my chin to the chest. Dowel comes down the legs, round the spine. Keep that dowel right in the legs. Want to hang out. Feel that stretch in the back of the legs and in the spine. And then I'm just going to move that dowel away from the body. Keep the weight back. Back to the shins. Keep that chin tucked. Come back up slowly, one vertebrae at a time. And then I'm going to push my hips forwards. Look back, get some extension. Pull the shoulder blades together. And then back down one more time here. Hands come down. The shins to the ground. Arms away. Don't need to force the stretch. Just feel that separation through each vertebrae. Keep the chin tucked. Dowel comes up along thighs. Feel that extension. Okay, it's important to get the shoulder blades together as well, but feet stay together. Push those hips forwards. Feel the extension through the spine. And then down. Okay, we're going to lie down on your stomach, prone position. Keep the dowel out in front. We're going to come to this in a minute here. So in this prone position, we're going to do some prone lifts. So we're going to start to work on shoulder activation. I want to think about making a Y here. And in this Y position, thumbs are up. Put my forehead down on the ground. I'm going to lift the thumbs up to the ceiling. Okay, keep the shoulders away from the ears. So it'll probably help to watch a couple reps here. Shoulders down away from the ears. Lift up and then just tap the pinky fingers down on the ground. Thumbs stay up. Stay in this Y position. Okay, so forehead on the ground. Tap the fingers. Going through 20 reps. 16. 15. Don't need to force them up too high, but I do want to get a little bit higher on each one, so long as I can keep the shoulders away from the ears. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next part, grab that dowel or band and broomstick, keeping that forehead down. Now I want to do a prone press. I want to bring this dowel right to the shoulder blades and then press straight up overhead. Straight line, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. Keep it high. 10 more. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. That's what we're using for the dowel today. Next part, we're going to go into some saddle rock. So we're going to now point the toes, sink down onto the heels. Okay, and I want to just rock and roll left and right. Okay, getting our plantar flexion. So loosening up through the ankles, The other direction. Focus on the breathing. Okay, so that last part, right, we're recovering thoracic spine, had to stay extended. Introducing that overhead position, wake up the shoulders, sink back a little bit more. Hands can come back behind you to add a little bit more pressure into the ankles, rolling back and forth for another 3, 2, 1, and good. First down dog sequence. So thinking now, we want overhead position, so feel the stretch through the lats, but then also think about the ankles. I'm not too concerned about the hamstrings. I want to think about those heels coming down. Your hamstrings might get a bit of a stretch here, but I'm thinking about the heels, loosening up through the calves if you can. Try to stretch those calves while keeping the arms up overhead. Another 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, the prone scorpion with a pec emphasis. So the scorpion, you may recall, is bringing the leg over top of the body. But the pec emphasis, the arm, is going to be similar to that Y position we were just in. Overhead, my other hand serves as a outrigger or positioned on the ground to help push up. So in this, I want to first find an angle that is going to allow the stretch to go through the pecs and not through the shoulders. So I want to find that stretch through the pecs. Other hand comes down the ground, and then other foot comes over. The other foot doesn't have to come that far over. If I'm already feeling the stretch in the pecs. We did bench press yesterday, so I'm probably feeling a little bit more than I normally would. But I want to feel that rotation, and then I want to come back and hold for a few seconds. Switch sides. Hold that rotation. Come back. In through the nose, out through the nose. Okay, on each of these, see if you can get a little bit further. It might just be a little or not much at all. But feel that rotation through the spine. Feel the stretch through the pec. We'll spend some time here. Although we haven't done this overhead squat yet, one of the things that you're going to feel, okay, for those of you that are less mobile, is the spine not wanting to rotate with the arm overhead. So a lot of these movements to prep us are going to help just that, an overhead position, rotation of the spine. Okay, I can feel myself beginning to loosen up here, both through the pecs and through the spine, focusing on where I'm feeling this. Getting one breath in, it's about 3 seconds. And 2 more here. Last one. And 2. Good. Coming back into child's pose, arms overhead, and rock. So thinking about with the arms overhead, the stretch through the lats. So I want to feel that right down the side of the upper torso here where the arm is connecting into the torso. Feel those lats stretching. I want to walk my fingers as far forwards as I can. Okay, and then I'm going to rotate up into the ceiling and then back down. So walk those fingers out, feel the stretch in the lats, rotate up, and then back down. Okay, rotate up and back down. With my hands being pushed into the ground, create some tension. Open up and back down. A little butt check here. Make sure the butt's staying down. Rotate up. Feel that stretch through the lats of the opposite arm from what's being lifted up. Another 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, back into our down dog. So pedaling out, push the heels down, feel that overhead position. alternating. Press the heel down. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's go into something you may be a bit more familiar with from what we did, especially last cycle, into our hip wipers. So as we begin now going into a hip sequence, got a lot of spine and shoulders there. So we went making sure we get the rotation in the overhead position, over and back. And yeah, we haven't even done the single arm overhead squat yet. But as I mentioned earlier, the single arm overhead squat is a great proxy for full body mobility. Okay, so just being able to loosen up to improve, whether you have the overhead squat, the single arm overhead squat or not, it's going to be a good mobility feat in its own right. 2 and 1. Let's go 90-90 into our figure 4 hip dab, reach, hinge, 90-90, reach. And for those of you that haven't done these hip dabs before, let's go cross-legged, find a 90-90 position, palm is up, reach forward as far as you can, chest comes down, leg comes forward into our cross-legged position, hinge. You can push the knees into the elbows to add a little bit more tension. And then I rotate on the other side, find that 90-90, reach, palm is up, and then come back. We alternate on each one here. Okay, the next one here, we're gonna hold it a little bit longer, reach forwards, palm is up. Think about the back leg reaching as far behind you as you can, the front arm getting as far overhead as you can. Big breath, and then exhale, fall into it, 2, 1, and then come back into that cross-legged position. Arms on the outsides of the knees, create a little bit more tension. Alternate sides, lift this foot up off the ground. Hand can assist. Find the 90-90, big inhale. Exhale and hold. Inhale and exhale, reach, get that back leg, reach back as far as you can, hands and fingertips as far overhead as you can. 3, 2, 1, come back up, 90-90, sink down. All right, into the frog. So find our frog, even frog position by pulsing. Feel even stretch through left and right sides here. In through the nose, out through the nose. We're gonna get the heel out into a half frog and then move into the hamstrings. I'll try to identify some of the common faults or limiting factors that you may have in each of these movements, both the overhead and the squat position. One of them is just going to be hanging out in a passive squat, which we're going to do momentarily. And part of that is being able to stretch out the hips, the groin especially, so that your knees can go out over your pinky toes. So as we pivot on the heel here, feel that stretch from the groin into the high hamstring. So I sink the hips down, groin, high hamstring, because this could be a limiting factor for you getting your knees out. 2, 1, and then let's bring that in, other side. So just gently go into this half frog, hamstring roll out, in through the nose, out through the nose, sinking down, in through the nose, out through the nose. Feel that from the inside of the hip into the groin, move into the hamstring. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, lizard position. So let's go into front foot forwards. Okay, back knee on the ground. So focus, and although this is going to sound familiar, but ankles. I want you to focus on the ankles. If we get the ankles under control, then you will also feel this in the hips. So at the bottom of the squat, I'll demo from this position. We want to have the tripod foot first. Let's start from our foundation, which is going to be pinky toe, big toe, heel firmly planted into the ground. Okay, with that down the ground, I've got a nice strong arch here. Okay, make sure you've got an arch. You don't want that foot collapsed. Then we're looking at the knee. The knee stays out over top of its pinky toe. Don't allow it to collapse in, but my knee is also forwards. change angles again on you. So I've got my tripod foot, I've got my knee out over the pinky toe, and then I've got it forwards. I want it as far forwards as possible, which means you might have to adjust that back knee to find this position. Then I'm going to lean. I'm going to take my forearm. I'm going to lean into this position here. And I'm just going to draw some circles. So what's a little bit different, just this emphasis on the ankle. As I lean onto the knee, okay, I want to find a little bit more of an end range through the back of the calf to be able to get down the bottom of this squat. Now I'm doing this on a mat, and although I didn't say this is a prop right at the beginning, we will, if we can use it almost like a wedge, a slant board. So I will, if you're doing this flat on the ground, that might be something like a book, might be something like a cushion, but just have that close by too. 3, 2, and 1. Okay, next part. I want to push the knee out. Still want to keep the big toe on the ground. I want to push that knee out. I want to get my inside arm down to the ground. And I want to hold this position. And I want to try and thread the needle. Reach underneath the arm. Look up to the ceiling. And then come back to center. So again, pushing that knee out a little bit wider, but big toe on the ground. I want to thread the needle. Reach underneath the arm. Big breath. Back to center. And on each one, a little bit further. That reach. Get that rotation through the spine, back to center. So really think about what the spine's doing here. Rotate, back to center. One more. Reach, rotate, back to center. All right, straighten out that front leg, little hamstring. 3, 2, and 1. Switching sides. Okay, tripod foot. I'll flip over here. Find that tripod. Find the knee out over top the pinky toe, and then push that knee as far forwards as possible. You might need to hold your foot down if you find that it's slipping. I'm gonna find this position. Wiggle around, rock here to create some better end range. In through the nose, out through the nose. Okay. Find that forward knee, outward on the pinky toe. Push it out as wide as you can, and then inside arm comes down. Thread the needle, reach, come back to center here. It's really about this internal rotation, I guess external rotation through the hip, but internal rotation with the body. Reach, palm is up, get that forearm down, back to center to ease that tension. Backing up, get that rotation. When I say the single arm overhead squat is a good proxy for full body mobility, a lot of this rotation that's required through the spine, the same rotation that's going to, if you're a runner, if you find that you've got lower back issues, you just don't have the ability for your spine to rotate, and you get blocked off, then there's got to be other muscles, joints picking up the slack. When they get overused, that's where you get those symptoms. Might be QL, might feel IT band, might just be from sitting more. Another 2, and 1. And good. Straighten out back leg here. Find the hamstring. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so ankle loads. I'm going to use a kettlebell. Heavier kettlebells work. Doesn't really matter which one. You don't have to have a kettlebell. You can load up using your arms. So if you don't have a kettlebell, that's fine. What I want to work on here, I want to get out of this lizard position, and I'm going to lean into the bell. Now I'm gonna lean into the bell. I wanna get my back knee. This is similar to what we call a hunter squat or a hunter lunge position. Okay, crouching position. And I want to keep my heel. I'm maintaining the tripod foot, but now I wanna maintain this knee as far forwards as possible. And then as I lean into it, I'm just gonna work with that knee coming forward. So you get a little bit of a soleus stretch through the Achilles here. Okay, if I'm not using a weight, I wanna push the knee forwards. The kettlebell serves as a good leverage point too, so I'm up a little bit higher as I push and lean into it. I feel that increased range of motion as the knee comes forward. And this is gonna be an important part. For those of you who don't have squats, forget the single arm overhead position, but just squats in general. Ankle mobility is going to be a huge hack for you to get down into the squat. A lot of people just assume it's their hips, okay, but we're going to address this when we get into our passive squat coming up next. I don't know if I've had too much anticipation for that squat yet, but hope you're as excited as I am, because we really didn't focus on getting into that passive squat position when we were working on the back bridge, which, by the way, we will still bring back intermittently, but don't worry, it's not a focus. So maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you did. Too bad, it's happening. Or congratulations if you like it. 2, 1, and good. All right, on to the other side. So again, this is important, this knee coming forwards, because the knee coming forwards means that you've got more dorsiflexion, the toes coming up, which means you've got more range of motion with your ankle, which means you are going to be able to get lower into the squat. So let's find that hunter squat position, crouch squat. There's a few names for it. We'll just call it you can call it a hunter lunge. I don't know. We'll firm this one up soon. Okay, I am sinking into it, pushing the knee forwards, and finding a position that his back foot is straight down or tucked under. I think the tucked under gives me a little bit more leverage. I'm gonna keep my shoulder on this kettlebell, or if you're not using a kettlebell, okay, your arms are on the top of the leg. I'm just gently pulsing. Okay, and why we pulse instead of just holding, as we pulse, or you find we go through a sort of like a stretch and then relax phase, so a lengthen, contract, allows us to get a little bit further. And the goal here is not necessarily flexibility, right? We want to be able to get the tissues, and as I'm slowly angling the knee in different positions, but we want to be able to get the tissues more comfortable moving in all of these positions that we're going to be in. I found more a little bit on the outside of the calf here as I push the knee out. Another 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Moving into the squat. So as I had mentioned before, using the mat is going to serve as my heel wedge, or if you've got a book that you can put underneath your heels so that the heels are slightly elevated. Okay, and this will be apparent as to why in a minute. So I want to sink down, find my squat position. Okay, shoulder width approximately, maybe a bit wider. Sinking down into this passive squat. Okay, find the big toe, little toe, so our tripod position. I want to stay even. I'm going to use my elbows to pry the knees out. Okay, and with this heel elevated position, I should have a more vertical torso. So let's stand back up, shake out the hips. Let's go through 10 full air squats here. 9, 8. I move the arms. It's working on mobility. Now I'm going to move the arms up overhead as I squat. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then back down. All right, let's get into this low squat position. So what I don't want you to do is just allow the feet to open up. We want to find a position, okay, where you can keep those feet in the same angle, sort of like this 10 to 20 degree range that you'd have in a squat. I want to use my elbows to help move the knees out, leverage them out, so I can create a palm, fist, together. That's my wedge. In through the nose, out through the nose. So our first, well, I don't know if it's the first lecture, probably already gone on a couple other lectures, but the first dedicated lecture is on this squat position. So for those of you now that have had to stand up, which is fine, okay, but just know that if you've had to stand up by this point in time with your heels elevated, this is probably where you have the most room for improvement. We want to be able to get this squat. This is your foundation down first, because you're not going to be able to get this single arm overhead, let alone an overhead squat, without first getting into this position. The good news is the best way to improve the squat is to just do it more. Now, what I like to do is I'm right now, for the sake of today's workout, we're going into this passive, non-loaded, heel elevated squat. And we're holding this for a minute. But if I took the kettlebell and used the kettlebell as a counterbalance, it's going to help me come forward. It's actually going to make this a little bit more comfortable for those of you that can't get down there. It doesn't need to be heavy, but just work on loading this position up. It might be your hips, might be your low back. We just got to work on loading this position up. Okay, for another 2, 1, stand up, shake it out. Okay, now we're going to come back and go into some rotations. So this is going to be the first movement that mimics the single arm overhead squat. I want to reach up and rotate, reach up and rotate. And as I'm getting this rotation, I want to think about driving the elbow into the knee, pushing away from the rotation, up and rotate. And if you've had to stand up, again, that's all right, but just know this is what we want to work on, this squat position. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Stay down. Another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stand up. Okay, so we just did that with the heels elevated. Now we're going to move away from the heels elevated. And you'll notice right away, let's go down into the squat, the increased demand for your mobility. Now the only thing we changed were those heels elevated. So if you notice a huge difference right now, or just any difference, that shows you the importance of ankle mobility. So the more mobile your ankles are, okay, the easier it'll be to get into this position. So I'm holding on. I'm also deliberately doing this no shoes on, because shoes create a sort of like a false lift where they've got a little bit of a, well, it's not a false, it's an actual lift. You've got this heel drop or toe drop where your heels are higher than your toes. And if you think about doing squats in high heels, same idea, lesser extent with running shoes. But a flat shoe is going to help train this position better so that when you do shoes, it'll feel easier. All right, let's go into our rotations. 10, pry out. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Standing up. Whew. Shaking that out. All right. Almost there. Getting into the more challenging parts now. So as we shake out those hips, one of the things we want to work on here is being able to lower yourself with an overhead position. So we're going to come back to the dowel, but I want to think straight arms overhead, full squat. So we go into this overhead squat position. As wide as your arms need to be. Again, wider will make it easier, narrow will make it tougher. Find your squat. We're going to go for 5, 4, keep that dowel overhead. 3, 2, and 1. Okay, shaking it out and get my hands a little bit closer together. So this is an important part, being able to increase the difficulty. Okay, I'm going to go into sets of 3 now. 3, 2, 1. Shaking it out. Hands a little bit closer. Might be a little bit too close. I still don't want to. I don't want to arch in this position. All right, for another 3 reps. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so for me, shoulders are tight. I'm going to go a little bit wider. We're going to go into what's called a Stotts press. So I can get my heels elevated or keep them flat. This is going to be optional here. I'm going to start with my heels elevated, start my squat, and then bring the dowel or band down and press up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then stand up. Get a couple rotations here. How's that feel? It's the tough part. Similar to those back bridges we were doing in the last training cycle for another 2, 1, and good. All right, done with the dowel. The next part, we're not going to spend too much time going into all of the technique needed here. This is going to be more as a mobility tool, but the half kneeling windmill. So grab your bell or dumbbell, kettlebell, even a shoe, as I mentioned before. And we're going to get one knee forwards. And that one knee forwards, I should say one foot down, knee up. It's going to be the same side that we have the bell on. So I want to clean that bell up into a front rack position. I'm going to press up overhead. Now in this half kneeling windmill, I just want to get my palm down to the ground, okay, and then press back up. So out of all of the windmills, this is the least mobility demanding. So I want you to focus on the movement here. Notice the spiral. So I start first, my belly button's pointing forwards. I hinge my hips, my hand comes down the thigh. Notice how my torso is now pointing to the side. This is going to be rotation through the shoulder, rotation through the spine, and a hinge the hips, a little rotation through the femur. So as I get to this position, I can do one more, 2, and 1. And I hold this position here, my hands down on the ground, and I want to bring the bell down and press up. Okay, if you can't get that press, just hold that up overhead, but I'm come down and press up. Okay, and this half kneeling press, half kneeling windmill press creates a little bit more demand on the lats. This should not be heavy, should be nice and light to do. 2, 1, hold this up overhead, feeling that in the lats, getting that stretch down the side of the torso. Now I'm going to rotate through the shoulder. Notice how I'm rotating the bell, rotating internally and then externally. Rotate internally, externally. 3, 2, and 1. Let's come back up, back down, and good. All right, other side. So switch up the knees. This is where you're going to start to see if you've got big imbalances from one side to the other. So with that bell overhead, hinge, work on the movement, arm up overhead, paint the thigh, palm down onto the ground. 3, 2, and 1. All right, so stay in this half kneeling windmill position. Make sure I've posted up here, the hand on the ground, supporting the weight, and then elbow comes down. Don't think about the hand touching the rib cage, it's just the elbow to the rib cage. Pressing up, elbow to the rib cage. Still maintaining this post position, palm into the ground. 5, 4, 3, 2. My other leg is still active, knee over the toes, and 1. Hold up overhead, rotate inwards and outwards. What I mean is that my foot, side the foot is flat on the ground, still active. That knee is staying over top of the foot. Rotate through the shoulder. 3, 2, 1, and back up. Okay, that side felt much easier than the other side, mobility-wise. Good. All right. Move into the overhead windmill. So this one here is going to be a little bit more challenging to do, and it'll be our second last thing, the last thing we do before the overhead squat test. but second last exercise to do. And this is going to be a really good mobility tool, good warm up. However, you need to get this technique down. So before we get into the bell, I'm going to review this. I'm going to start with my feet hip width apart. I'm going to open up my feet to one side. Now, it doesn't matter which side you open your feet up, but when we open up the feet to one side, my hips are going to slide away. So I open up, let's say to the right, hips slide to the left. The emphasis is going to be on my left leg here. My right knee is slightly bent. Okay, my right knee is slightly bent. I just want you to feel that stretch on the outside. Come back up, feet to center, feet to the other side, hinge. Okay, the leg I'm feeling now on the right side. Notice how my left knee is bent. Come back up to center. I'm gonna pivot one more time and go to the other side. Hinge, feel this stretch. So it's like we're getting into a Romanian deadlift, but with a spiral. Okay, and this Romanian deadlift with the spiral, should feel this down the outside of the hamstring. Go a little bit further. One more time, other side, hinge. Feel that stretch in the side. Notice how my torso is straight. I'm not bending through the torso. I hinge down through the hips. My left knee is bent here, okay, just using for stability. I'm loading up. Now, we're gonna go down, feet a little bit wider. I'm gonna open up, same idea, I'm gonna hinge. Now, I don't want the feet so wide because then I can't hinge. So I wanna find a position, might be a little bit wider than what we were just doing, where I can still hinge. This weight stays on the left foot. This is an important setup position because I see this happen all the time. If you get too wide of a stance, now we're putting the weight in the front leg, which is where we don't want it. We want to push that hip back. Okay, I want to let my inside arm, so on the right leg, which is slightly bent, my hand comes down the inside, and I'm going to just lean over. I want to feel the stretch down the side of the torso. Okay, lift that arm up overhead. Notice the straight line over, and I want to feel the stretch down the outside. Okay, it's a stretch down the outside. Other side here. Open up those feet. Get that side hinge. Push the butt back. Inside arm comes down. Okay, feel the stretch. Don't reach your arm up left yet until you feel that stretch down the outside. So that might mean adjusting your foot. Find which position gives you that stretch so the torso stays straight. Again, don't be too wide. Want to hinge, feel that stretch. Okay, that's a good position for me. Arms down the inside. I reach and straight up. Okay. If this starts to feel wonky, go to the body weight version. Don't use the kettlebell. 1, you don't want to hurt yourself. 2, I don't want you to develop bad habits. And 3, it doesn't matter if you've got the bell up overhead at this point. It's really about finding that stretch, finding the position. All right, start with my left side, press up. The side the bell is on, we're gonna rotate feet away from it. I wanna find this hinge. In some ways, this is easier to find the hinge, okay, because you're gonna have this loaded position overhead. I'm then going to bring the hand down the inside, and I spiral my way down. Now, I don't need to touch the floor for this to be a successful movement. I just need to, as I move, like the Romanian deadlift, find tension as I spiral. Find tension as I spiral. If your torso is bending, or you don't feel the stretch down the outside of the leg and on the outside of the torso, there's probably something wrong. What I'm gonna encourage you to do, these next 2 parts, is film yourself. I got 2 more reps. Okay, film yourself doing this, and then you're gonna send them to me, and I'm gonna review them for you. Okay, send them to me, and I will review them for you. And good, those are my 5 reps. On the other side, swing on the other side. Press up, overhead, open up, find my hinge, down, and back up. Don't need to touch the ground. It's only about finding that tension. Notice how my hips continue to move away. I am not shifting my weight over to the side coming down. I want to think butt coming out. I spiral down the inside of the leg. 2 more. 2. Last one. and down. Okay, so that filming part, it's important. Okay, all elite sports teams, elite athletes will film themselves, okay, because you want to be able to evaluate yourself afterwards. Since you're the only one doing this, you're probably by yourself right now doing it. Okay, prop your phone up, film yourself. Okay, you want to be able to see what this looks like. And then you're going to send it to me. You can send this to me through WattUp. Okay, so if you record this workout in WattUp, okay, you upload the video, send it to me there. For those of you that aren't on WattUp, I guess you could send it to me on Instagram. Don't want to open up the floodgates there, but send me the video. How's my windmill? And we're going to do the same thing now as we go into the single arm overhead squat. So this one, definite film, because it's, well, one, it's about getting good technique, and I will evaluate you too. But two, this is our test. We want to compare this movement at week 1 to it at week 7 and see the progress. Last month, or the last training cycle, that back bridge, huge improvement for me from week 1 to week 5. Okay, that difference was quite noticeable. And I felt a lot better going into that position. I could get higher up, I could hold it longer, and that's gonna be the whole idea here is we're trying to improve the single arm overhead squat, because as you've heard me say multiple times now, the single arm overhead squat is a great proxy for full body mobility. I'm gonna start with what I know to be my better side here, which is gonna be on the right side. Give me a better chance. Get that bell into an overhead position. Okay, now the goal here is to keep this arm straight up overhead, and the kettlebell is actually easier than the dumbbell because it takes the wrist out of the equation. But whatever you have overhead, kettlebell, dumbbell, or shoe. I'm gonna find my squat position. I'm gonna lower myself down. Notice the rotation, and back up. Okay, see how much rotation I'm getting? Ideally, I wanna be straight. Okay, ideally, I wanna be straight. If you think the right side's bad here for me, wait until the left side. Lower myself down. And back up. Okay, I'm gonna do one more here. Create a fist, close the chain with the other side. Let's try to stay even. I'll even do this for a side view here. And down. All right, good. Whew. All right, that's one side. My kryptonite. So depending on where you are, that's fine. You might get stuck, and you'll see where I get stuck on this one. Film it. We want to improve it. The overhead squat itself is not, look, we just did 45 minutes of mobility for this. Although this is a great mobility tool, we got to work up to it. And if you're able to get down there, fantastic. We're going to work at heavier weights over the next 7 weeks. Okay, arm up overhead, close the chain, create a fist, get your squat width. 3 reps, 2 more. Yeah, if this is heavier, I would fall. Imagine if we didn't do the mobility before. Okay, straight up overhead. Create that fist. Okay, good. Well, there it is. That's our week 1 single arm overhead press. Don't be discouraged if you couldn't do it, and don't think, wow, that was a waste of 45 minutes. It felt very easy to do. This is an excellent position which we can improve. Whether you've got it or don't have it throughout the next 7 weeks. Make sure you film that if you forgot to do it after doing it, after this whole sequence. Film yourself trying a couple. The front and the side will help. Send it to me either through WattUp or on Instagram. I will help evaluate you, especially in the windmill. The windmill is going to be something that we work on a lot because it's a more achievable from a mobility standpoint movement. We'll continue to progress this. So solid week 1. Let's improve that full body mobility. Get ready for our squats, overhead presses. I'll see you in the next one.